Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Enort in the relationship subreddit. The post is titled, I, 22M, suspect something between my GF and my friend. I'm really freaking out right now because if what I suspect is true, this living situation is about to get really complicated. Please tell me I'm just crazy. Sorry if this is long. Background. We are two couples living together and we all attend the same university. The apartment was originally leased by my girlfriend of about 2 years, Alexis 22F, and our mutual friend Brooke 22F. The apartment is huge and expensive. There was originally supposed to be 3 girls living there, but the last one backed out abruptly. They were planning on moving somewhere cheaper, but they had put a lot of work into the apartment and loved it so much that they hated the idea of leaving. I offered to move in when my lease was up in May so we could split the rent and utilities 3 ways. I was sleeping over often anyway. Both girls were absolutely ecstatic about the idea. Shortly before I moved in, Brooke started dating my best friend, Derek. This was cool because now both couples got to hang out with their best friends and significant others all at once. It seemed perfect. Derek began sleeping over a lot, and when his parents sold their house and left in October, he temporarily moved in. We haven't really pushed him to find a new place because splitting everything 4 ways is helping all of us so much. However, only Alexis and Brooke are on the lease. Surprisingly, the apartment owner does not mind as long as rent gets paid because we are always quiet. Incident 1. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Brooke and I have early classes, so we're gone by 8 a.m. Derek and Alexis start in the afternoon, so it's not unusual for them to leave together, though they usually take separate cars. One day, I decided to wait for Alexis outside her class to surprise her with lunch. I watched everyone shuffle out of the class, but Alexis wasn't with them. I texted her asking where she was, and she replied, "Just got out of class. Gonna go home to study." I called her to see if I had just barely missed her or something, but there was no response, which I considered weird because she had just texted me a second ago. She didn't answer until much later, which is also unusual for her. Later in the day, I ran into Brooke and she mentioned in passing that Derek had stayed home sick. She was going to bring him soup, blah blah. At the time, I didn't think much of it. When I got home later that night, I noticed Alexis's car was in the exact same spot. I asked her if she'd gone to class and she got quiet before sheepishly admitting to skipping because she felt the professor was terrible at explaining things. She knows I hate when she skips classes. I kissed her and said I trusted her judgment. While I was doing the dishes, she explained that she probably won't skip again because being bored alone in the house was the worst. I laughed and we went about our business. At night, we went to bed, and as I lay there drifting off, it hit me. She shouldn't have been alone because Derek was homesick, right? She was still up on her phone, so I popped awake and asked her where Derek was that day since Brooke had said he was homesick. She seemed startled by the question, but that may have been from me being half asleep to suddenly wide awake with a random question. She said he was there briefly in the morning, but went to do errands or something and she wasn't sure. After the other incidents, I realized that the scattered way she answered this question seemed off, but that may just be my imagination. Incident 2, I went to throw some trash out in the kitchen garbage when I noticed a condom wrapper that was the exact same brand Alexis and I use. It wasn't super visible, sort of tucked behind a cereal box, but the distinctive color caught my eye. Brooke and Derek always use a different brand. It was weird because we usually keep the wrappers in our respective rooms' garbage cans, so they never appear in the kitchen. Furthermore, because of exams and general stress, Alexis and I hadn't slept together in a few days. I didn't really dig around for a used condom or anything, I just went back to the room to check if any of ours were missing. I really couldn't tell because we buy in bulk. My first thought was that Brooke and Derek had run out and broken into our stash, and I was upset that they hadn't even asked. Later that night, I mentioned the condom wrapper to Alexis and her eyes got wide. When I mentioned my theory, she got unusually distressed and went on a rant about them violating our privacy. I suggested we talk to them about it and she immediately shut the idea down, making me swear not to bring it up unless they did it again. She didn't want to have this awkward conversation, which was weird to me because we're all generally pretty open about given that we live together, though it is possible that Alexis was being genuine because she's from a conservative small town and doesn't talk about these things as much as we do. Incident 3. Me and Derek are cool with the dudes in the apartment next to us who are graduates from our university. We don't hang out or anything, but we have the kind of relationship where we make small talk about sports or whatever in the hall and are comfortable asking the other to keep it down without it being awkward. Last Monday, I was locking up when no one else was at the apartment when I ran into one of the guys from next door. We talked football for a bit, and then he mentioned that one of the couples in the apartment is really a fan of morning and that the walls were way too thin. I laughed because Alexis and I usually had weekend mornings when we had the house to ourselves. The more I thought about it later in the day, the more I realized we hadn't been having morning in about a month. On the weekends, it had been more towards the evening or not at all. Did he mean on weekdays? My heart sort of dropped. I kind of want to ask him to elaborate, but the conversation ended and I feel like I missed my chance. Plus, it's a weird thing to ask, and I feel like I must be being paranoid. So there you have it, Reddit. Am I crazy? Am I looking for signs that aren't there, or is something up? And if so, how do I proceed? I don't want to ask her just yet because I don't want to come off as crazy and jealous if nothing's up. If something is up, I don't want them to start hiding it better. I was thinking of dropping by one of those mornings they're alone together, but I don't know how to time it right. If I drop by too early or late, they might get more cautious. User Bernie1 said, "Your neighbor is a bro and giving you a massive hint in my opinion. Edit, damn man, well now you know. Definitely owe one to the guy that tipped you off though. Stay strong." User Throwaway99 said, "Too many coincidences. Dude, her cheating is very much a possibility. Talk to Brooke about the condom wrapper thing, you may have your answer." User Ka said, "The chances are pretty good that something is going on. Sorry man, but that many things stacking up one after the other just screams cheating to me. Your best bet is to go home early one day and see what's happening. Definitely keep your eyes open for the next few weeks." To this, OP said, "That sounds like the best plan. I'm just praying I time it right. I'll definitely update if anything new happens." Update. The majority of you suggested that I speak to Brooke and attempt to walk in on the act. I decided to do both. Sunday night, everyone was back in the apartment. I had every intention of speaking to Brooke about the neighbor's comment alone, but before I could, she said something that completely threw my theory off. She told Derek to get to bed so he wouldn't be tired for work in the morning. What? I knew Derek had a job on campus, but he had always worked the same night shifts. Being as casual as possible, I inquired how long he'd been working mornings and when he started. He said he picked up the extra shifts a month ago and worked at 9. I spent the rest of the night trying to figure out whether he was lying about that, whether he still had some mornings here at home, whether Alexis could be seeing someone other than Derek in the mornings, or if I was just a paranoid loser. I went to bed feeling emotionally drained and confused. The next morning, I left for classes as usual and operated on autopilot. I alternated between thinking I'd run home to check on Alexis and thinking I had way too much work to run around based on a theory that I wasn't even sure about anymore. In the end, I walked out of my first class and straight to my car to go home. In a weird way, I sort of wish I hadn't. When I got to the apartment, Derek's car wasn't there, just Alexis. I walked to the apartment with my heart pounding like crazy. I don't know what I was expecting. Outside the apartment door, I could immediately hear a guy's voice inside. I heard him talking and laughing with a soft, feminine mumble replying and giggling back. I've been on this subreddit long enough to see all the different reactions people have to this situation. I never once contemplated what I'd do. I pressed my ear to the door to see if I could make out what they were saying, but I could only catch a word here and there. There was a lot of giggling. Then I heard the sound of Alexis being tickled and shrieking. Maybe I should have waited longer. In retrospect, I wish I had, but I couldn't take it. As soon as I started fiddling with my keys, there was dead silence inside. She was with Mark. I never mentioned Mark in the previous post, but he's one of the guys in the apartment next to us. He's the only one I've never liked. Such a know-it-all douchebag attitude. He always made inappropriate comments toward both girls, but I never thought anything of it. As soon as I opened the door, they both gave me a deer-in-headlights look that removed any naive doubt I may have retained about the situation being innocent. I had planned on yelling at them or demanding answers, but my eyes began to well with tears. I didn't want them to see that, so I said, "Nice, real fucking nice," and bolted back to my car. I heard Alexis yelling my name in the hallway and picked up the pace. I sort of expected her to be chasing me, but by the time I got to the car, there was no one following me. I drove to a park near the apartment and sat there in disbelief. My first thought, weirdly enough, was, how is my family going to take this? What the hell am I going to tell them? My family loved Alexis. They joked about our wedding and regularly called her part of the family. Then I started thinking about living arrangements. Our finals end in about 2 weeks. There's no way I can handle moving now. I'm applying to an extremely competitive graduate program and I can't let anything get in the way of that. Definitely not this cheating AH. I'm writing this from a friend's house. I explained the situation to him and he told his parents, who welcomed me to stay in their home. I'm going to have to go back home to get some clothes sometime. I'm planning on going during this lab period when I know Alexis can't skip tomorrow. It took her about an hour to start blowing up my phone, but once she did, it didn't stop. She started off asking me to come home so she could explain. Before I even had the chance to respond, she sent another message begging me to come back because she was having an anxiety attack. Something I always help her through. Maybe I'm heartless, but all I could think was, good, you earned it. There was a pause and then she sent, I don't know why you get so jealous, we were just hanging out. I waited. She sent, look, I know it looks super sketchy. Believe me, if I were you, I'd think the same thing, but we didn't do anything. He needed advice on his girl problems. You have to believe me. No, I don't. Normally, I would have gotten a weird sense of satisfaction watching a cheater scramble to cover their tracks, but my stupid brain just kept replaying all those great times we had together and wondering if she was cheating then too. I want to know when this started, but at the same time, I'm worried it's been going on for longer than the month I've suspected something. I received a text later that night from a number I didn't recognize. It was the nice guy from next door. He said that he got my number from Derek. He was extremely sorry for what I was going through and that he would have told me sooner, but wasn't completely sure. He said he knew his friend was seeing a girl with a boyfriend, but didn't put it together until he learned the girl's name. As many of you suspected, the comment was him trying to tip me off. So yeah, I guess he's bro of the year. I don't think Derek and Brooke know yet. I haven't texted them, I haven't found the words. I know it's going to turn our living arrangements and friendships upside down. I guess I should message them before Alexis paints a different picture. I wonder what the cool neighbor said when he asked for my number. I don't think he told them. They would have said something, right? Unless they took her side. Then I've lost my girlfriend and friends. Any advice on coping with something like this, especially from those who have been there before, would be greatly appreciated. I don't have many friends to reach out to besides the guy I'm staying with. Alexis, Brooke, and Derek were basically my family. Alexis and I had talked about spending our lives together. I have never been serious about a girl the way I was with her. Edit. I am genuinely moved by the amount of support you all are giving me here. Please keep it coming. I may not reply to all the comments, but I've read each one on both posts. I'm going to tell Derek and Brooke soon. I'll try to do a follow-up when I have some sort of plan. Update 2. You wonderful people. Between the comments on both posts and my inbox, I have an immense collection of personalized pep talks, which I am referring to whenever I feel down. I got advice and stories from all sorts of people. Married, single, old, young. Wow. I never thought the internet would bring me this level of support. I just want you guys to know that by typing up some comments, you have made a very real difference in someone's life. I gotta say, it feels a little strange receiving 6 Reddit Gold Awards and making it to r/best of just for sharing the worst day of my life. I got a lot of messages urging me to join Red Pill. This experience has soured my view of Alexis, not women in general. I received some messages saying I write too well and that this is obviously made up. I have 2 words for you. I wish. A clarification on the last update. I wasn't clear about what I saw when I walked in. They weren't literally having sex. They were just sitting on the couch with a deer in headlights look that was incredibly incriminating, and they both went quiet. It was obviously not a guess who dropped by situation. Anyways, onto the update. I've been extremely busy with the semester ending, and I took the majority's advice to bury my head in work. I've spent a lot of time at the library because Alexis never goes there. In the process of posting the last update, I realized how dumb it was that I hadn't contacted Derek and Brooke with my side of the story. I screenshotted the text from the cool neighbor, Will. Within a minute, Derek was blowing up my phone with calls and texts that made it very apparent he didn't know anything. At the same time, Alexis was sending texts begging me to meet up with her. Feeling miserable, I sent back a single text to Derek saying I wasn't feeling up to talking and then put my phone away for the night. In the morning, I got a text asking me to meet him at my favorite restaurant for dinner and drinks on him, assuring me that no one would be there, not even Brooke. I haven't had any appetite since everything went down, but the offer meant a lot, and I really did want to see him, so I decided to go after classes. I got to the restaurant first and I had my heart in my throat, worrying that Alexis would somehow be there, but she wasn't. Derek came up to me and gave me a big hug, opening with, "Dude, what the F?" So here's where things get a bit crazy and dramatic. A lot of you suggested that Brooke might side with Alexis or had been covering up for her the whole time. I wasn't so sure because while she is closer to Alexis, she and I have been friends for a bit longer. According to Derek, as soon as he told Brooke, she was absolutely furious. In his words, "I sort of wanted to bitch Alexis out, but Brooke took care of that and then some." Remember how I said Alexis came from a conservative small town? Her parents had no idea that we were living together, and she constantly stressed that they couldn't know or they'd cut her off financially. They liked me enough to be polite, but they were always worried a relationship would distract her from school and didn't want her getting pregnant or whatever. Derek said that Brooke demanded Alexis pack her things and find a new place, or she'd call up her parents and tell them everything. He told me that later that night, Alexis was sitting in the living room hugging a sweater I'd left behind and wailing at the top of her lungs that her life was over when Brooke yelled from her bedroom, "Well, maybe you shouldn't have screwed Mark then." Imagining that moment was kind of funny. Brooke's always been a very no-nonsense girl with a hot temper, but I definitely didn't expect this. It was extremely touching that she took the cheating so seriously. During that dinner, all my fears about losing my friends were completely washed away, and I was able to choke down a few pieces of sushi. When we left dinner, Derek promised to let me know when Alexis was gone so I could move back in. I declined his offer because, one, even if she does move out, everything in that apartment reminds me of her, including Derek and Brooke. Two, Alexis and Mark probably had slept together in my room, so I really don't want to sleep in it. Three, in the current emotional state I'm in, I don't want to be third-wheeling a happy couple, even though I'm sure they'd be considerate. He understood my points, but said to let him know if I changed my mind because Brooke and Alexis's friendship seems to be pretty much over. This week has been pretty uneventful, but I keep having to dodge Alexis. Luckily, I'm in an undergraduate program with only 60 students, so we have many classes together. I asked two friends to keep an eye out for her after giving them a summary of the story and started showing up to class at the last minute. As far as I know, she only waited outside of one of my classes. I got a text saying, "SJA has been spotted in front of classroom. Waterworks in progress. Proceed with caution." I ended up skipping the class because I didn't know if she was going to leave and I really didn't want to risk it. Later that night, she sent me a really long Facebook message explaining everything from the beginning, and it sort of made me sick to read. I contemplated not reading it, but once I opened it, I just had to. She said that he had been flirty with her in the halls and that she tried to be friendly back, but it must have come off as flirting because he kissed her mid-sentence one day. She said she felt guilty that she led him on, and that guilt prevented her from rejecting his future advances because she felt like it was her fault it happened and she has trouble saying no. She claimed that they had only slept together 3 times and that she hated it. He had pushed her into it and that she was going to end it during the conversation I walked in on. She said she understood if I needed some time and space, but that she'd do absolutely anything to make it right, and would spend the rest of her life making it up to me by treating me like a king. I'd never have to cook, clean, or do my laundry again, giving me full access to her phone and passwords. She even suggested we install Life 360 so I would know where she was at all times, cutting off all contact with Mark and all her male friends, having makeup sex whenever I wanted. Yeah, that sounds like a healthy relationship, right? I didn't answer. I kind of wanted to keep her on Facebook and watch the shit show unfold, but I know how I am. I didn't want to compulsively check her page or go through old photos, so I blocked her. Derek sent me a text a few hours later saying, "She's crying and screaming about you blocking her." In happier news, the family I'm staying with is fantastic. I felt a little guilty about taking up their space, electricity, etc., so I offered to pay rent and cover some bills, but they declined. The dad said, "First month's free. If you need more time here, then we'll talk about it," and winked. My friend told me that they have hosted his and his sister's troubled friends before, so it wasn't a big deal. Still, I'm unbelievably grateful. As for Will, I called him to thank him for everything. I wasn't up to inviting him for dinner just yet, but I will. He apologized profusely. He said he can't stand Mark, not just for what he did with Alexis, but for various other things that I won't go into. He told me that Mark has been unusually quiet the past few days and told another one of the guys that he had gotten dumped. whatever. I don't want to think about it. So that's really all I have for you guys. I'm still going to be friends with the Derek and Brooke, but I'm going to limit my contact with them because they remind me of Alexis so much. I sent Brooke a message thanking her for kicking Alexis out, and she said she'd do it regardless of whether or not I move back in. She's going to give me a heads up on when Alexis is gone so I can get the rest of my things. In the meantime, I'm spending a lot of time studying, applying to grad schools, and hanging out with the guy I'm living with. Earlier this week, I posted in my university's Facebook group searching for roommates for next semester, and I already have a few replies. I'm going to wait until after finals to tell my parents about the situation because my mom asks a million questions about everything, and I'm not in the mood to answer them. Again, thank you for all the messages. I did not expect this level of attention, and while it has made me a bit paranoid that someone will recognize the story from the details, screw it, I needed the support. I love you guys. Update 3. Well, I really wasn't planning on updating, but a lot of you have prodded for one, and I do owe you guys after all the wonderful support I received. Once finals ended, everything hit me like a ton of bricks. Almost worse than the initial insult. I removed all my social media pictures with her, threw out stuff that reminded me of her, took our songs off my playlists. We've been inseparable since we met. So this was over 2 years of accumulated memories. Long story short, it was very hard, but I had an urge to get it all done before the new year. That whole cliche of new year, new me thing, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, one particular Redditor sent me a message about how Alexis might be driven to self-harm now that she's lost everything. I know that seems like an overdramatic prediction, but I couldn't get it out of my mind after reading it. What Alexis did was absolutely terrible, but I felt like a final conversation might give me better closure and maybe help her understand that it's completely over and encourage her to move on. So I planned to meet with her before everyone went home for break. A lot of you were big on icing her out, so I'm genuinely sorry to disappoint, but I had to do this for me. I sent Alexis a message. If you want to talk, we can meet up somewhere, but there's no way we can be together after what happened, so please don't ask. She responded almost immediately, asking when and where. We arranged to meet at an off-campus coffee place. When I got there, she was already at a table and got up to hug me. I waved her away and she jerked back like a puppy that had been kicked. I felt shitty immediately, but I wanted to get it over with. We made some small talk. She asked how I'd been, how finals went, etc., but I sort of interrupted it. I asked her if she had been unhappy with our relationship. Her eyes got wide and she said no a bunch of times before going quiet. So I asked her why if she wasn't unhappy. Basically, she retold the story about having trouble saying no and him being so pushy. I stopped her and asked her to cut the BS and just take responsibility, that maybe it excused her actions up until he kissed her mid-sentence, but 3 times. Yeah, no. She looked down, shrugged, and muttered, "You're right, I know." At this point, she started tearing up and said she was so sorry that I'd never understand how sorry she was. Then she asked if there was any chance we could be together again, which I was kind of expecting even though I told her not to. I just shook my head. I told her she could still live with Derek and Brooke if she wanted to, but she declined and told me she already had plans to move in with another girlfriend of hers. From there on out, the conversation went in circles with her trying to explain away her actions by saying she had difficulty turning down guys due to her fear of being seen as a frigid bitch, while I tried to get her to admit that excuse was garbage. I don't know why, I just really needed her to stop using that crutch and admit she had ruined a perfectly good relationship with a very real future all on her own. But she just wouldn't. She was always stubborn. Finally, I let it go and we parted ways somewhat amicably. As I was leaving, she grabbed my hand and parted her lips to say something, but ended up shaking her head and letting go. The conversation made me feel worse than I had at first, but ultimately it really made me see that she was never the kind of person I wanted to be with, even without the cheating. She never took responsibility for anything. I just never really thought about it too hard. I think I was still in the honeymoon stage or something. So at this point, I left the coffee place and asked Derek to hang out. I ended up going to the apartment, and although Brooke was there, she mostly stayed in her room. We drank some beers and played video games, which really cheered me up. We also talked a bit about everything that had happened. He admitted that they hadn't been able to find a third roommate and asked me again to stay with them. I could tell he really wanted me to, and I felt guilty about them being stuck with the lease, so I accepted. I told them I needed to wait until Alexis took all her things though. The furniture is hers from before I even moved in, and I still don't want to sleep in that bed. Also, Brooke apologized for getting so involved in the situation and yelling at Alexis. Apparently, her stepdad had cheated on her mom, and it's a sore subject for her. I told her I genuinely didn't mind, and she was welcome to do it again if the mood struck her. I also bought Will some food and drinks at a great place near campus. A lot of you wanted to know the other things Mark had done that had Will so pissed off. Apparently, he had to be harassed to pay rent, claimed he couldn't contribute to any of the household expenses, and regularly came in yelling and laughing at odd hours while agreeing to keep it down but then carrying on at the same volume. Just standard douchebag roommate crap, really. Will is a really cool guy. We talked a lot about the situation with Alexis, but also about school and sports. It was actually pretty fun. I eventually did tell my folks about the situation, and as expected, my mom bombarded me with 1,000 questions and cried a lot. So that was fun. Going home made me feel a little better, but my older brother got engaged on Christmas Eve, and given the recent circumstances, I wasn't as excited for him as I should have been, which made me feel like a shitty sibling. Plus, it's all my family can talk about now, and I'm just not in the mood. Life isn't perfect now, but I'm doing better. Alexis moved her stuff out, and I bought a secondhand bed and dresser from another student. I had my first round of classes last week, and although I'm going to sound like a total nerd, the courses are really cool, hands-on, and the professors are incredibly nice people. Derek and Brooke have been really supportive and don't make me feel like a third wheel at all. I saw Mark in the hallway once. He totally ignored me, and I ignored him, but the urge to punch him in the face was very real. I guess that's something that will go away over time. I almost wanted to call him out on the whole thing, but with the kind of person Will had described, the conversation would have gotten me nowhere and probably pissed me off even more. Sorry, this update isn't as exciting as the previous ones. Thank you for your love and support, Reddit. It really helped me through such a bad time. User Chivalrous Pervert said, I am completely not surprised by this. In my life, I've watched multiple friends and family members who were cheated on by their wives or girlfriends, and there hasn't been a single case where the guilty party admitted fault and took responsibility for her actions. She'd always either make excuses for herself or try to blame her boyfriend or husband for her actions. People who cheat almost always rationalize it in their minds. To this, Bringing Sassy Back said, my mother not only rationalizes her cheating, but also cheating in general. She always says, people don't cheat unless they're given a reason to. I always thought that was really weird of her to say until I realized that she was full of it regarding how she got with my stepdad. User 1 Year Wonder said, I knew a guy like Mark once. He moved to a larger city and got stabbed within a week for pulling that shit with the wrong people. I felt bad for his mom, but I wasn't surprised. Let's all just hope that something similar happens to your Mark too. People like that don't get to enjoy their lives. Much like how Alexis couldn't take responsibility for her own BS, people like Mark are always having issues and can't ever figure it out. Really, living like that is its own punishment, but maybe not as satisfying as clocking him would be. It is slightly comforting though, knowing what kind of bullshit people like that put themselves through. User JD Trans said, I really want to punch Mark in the face for you. He wouldn't understand why it happened. To him, it would just be a stranger who asked him for the time and then delivered a mean left hook. I was actually thinking of sending you a message to wish you well. I was digging through my old comments to find the thread, but luckily this is still up here. Good job, OP, and hopefully you'll find someone who is better for you. This next post was made in the AITAH subreddit by a throwaway account. The post is titled AITAH for going behind my sister's back and taking our deceased mother's wedding dress. So I, F27, getting married to my fiance, M28, in October. He proposed last February, and we have most of the preparations already set up. The only thing I haven't found is a dress. I have been to many places, but I haven't found something I like. Last month, I asked my sister if I could use our mom's dress, as it was in the style I was looking for, and it would be a way for my mom to be there in spirit. Everyone tells me I am the spitting image of my mother. I have nearly her exact measurements, so I wouldn't even have to alter the dress. My sister said no since it was a gift from mom to her. My mom passed away when I was 15 after a long battle with cancer. My sister F35 had a long-term boyfriend at the time, and before she passed, my mom said she wanted her to wear her wedding dress when she got married. However, a few months after her passing, my sister broke up with her boyfriend and went years without any long-term partners. About 3 years ago, she came out as a roace and has stated many times that she has no interest in getting married or having a romantic partner. I asked a few more times and she always said no. I feel like she is being unfair since our mom wanted the dress to be worn and she was also my mother. I was too young to receive any big gifts from her when she passed. I have said that I would return the dress to my sister after the wedding. I even told her I would get a different dress for the reception. If I could just wear it to walk down the aisle, I would be happy. She has still refused. Last week, I asked my father about it and he started crying because he was so happy. He told me that my mom would be thrilled for me and that he loved that I was honoring her in this way. My father has kept the dress in a safe spot ever since my mom passed. He brought the dress to my house earlier today so we could see how it looked and so I could store it with my things. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. I looked like a princess, but more importantly, I looked like my mom. Dad said he made the right choice and that he was happy for me. I just got off the phone with my sister, who called me screaming and crying about how I had no right to wear it and how that was our mother's gift to her. She told me she would never forgive me if I wore it to the wedding and that I was no longer her sister. I love this dress and how it connects me to my mom, but it was my sister's first and I feel like I've stolen from her. I might return it based on how this turns out. AITA, edit info. The dress is not legally my sister's. It was not mentioned in her will. It was with my dad because my mom wanted it stored properly. User Kali the Blase said, if your sister has no intention of ever getting married and you're giving back the dress after the wedding, what are you really taking from her? She will still own the dress and she never intends to use it in the way you're using it. Your sister is being very selfish. To this user, Creeves said, but OP's sister never really owned the dress. When their mom knew she was dying and that her daughter was getting married, she asked her to wear the wedding dress. That's all. The sister was no longer getting married, so she was never going to use the dress. As far as I'm concerned, OP is in the clear. User Dandy Bear said, your sister is being unreasonable. It sounds like she has unresolved feelings about the end of her relationship, your mother's death, or both. Those are seriously difficult things to deal with, so I won't call her the asshole, but under the circumstances, it's reasonable to say that your father's permission stands in for your mother's. I'm going to guess that your mother didn't mean for your sister to have exclusive use of the dress. She likely intended for it to be used next, but not exclusively by her. So I say you have the right to wear the dress. The question is whether you're willing to risk damaging your relationship with your sister over it. It is not fair for her to put you in this position, but you'll have to deal with the consequences anyway, so it's your choice either way. User Fantastic Music said, I think everyone is also missing the part of the story where OP's mom said she wanted the sister to wear the dress for her wedding, not to keep it forever or not share it with her sister. If the dad had it, then it wasn't gifted to her at all. It never left the mom's house since the sister didn't get married and fulfill mom's wish of her wearing it. Dad has the final say in this matter as he was the one in possession of the dress. To this, a deleted user said, I feel that if the dress was truly meant to be exclusively for OP's sister, their mother would have put it in the will. I think there may be some resentment regarding OP resembling her mother. I would be completely on the sister's side if she either wanted to get married or if OP was such a different size that the dress had to be significantly altered, but that's not the case. I would also consider the intent of their mom and whether she would have extended the invitation, and I think that is what the father is agreeing with. It definitely seems like perceived favoritism or resentment is coming out. Update. So last night my father texted me saying that he wanted my sister and me to have lunch with him today to talk everything through because there was some miscommunication on his part involving our mother and what she wanted. My sister has given me permission to update this post. We had lunch and my dad explained why he thought it was okay. The reason my mother had told my sister she wanted her to wear the dress at her wedding is that her partner at the time had asked for our parents' blessing and had plans to propose to her. According to him, the dress was supposed to be a wedding gift from both of them and a final goodbye from our mom. Our parents were usually really good at giving us things 50-50, even though I was younger. However, since I was young when she died, most of her valuable possessions were bequeathed to my sister. I did receive money added to my college fund from her savings and her favorite purse, so I did get some things. But our dad got everything else. And our mom instructed him to gift us some of her more important items during our big milestones so she could still be involved in our lives. After my sister and her partner broke up, our dad assumed that the dress was still part of that deal, even though our mom had talked to my sister about it before she passed. My sister told us the reason she wanted the dress so badly, aside from sentimentality. She has been trying to get IVF and wanted the dress for her future child. Later, when we were talking one-on-one, she also admitted to me that her ex-partner proposing is what made her finally realize she was ace. Even though she has accepted it, the dress is still a reminder of everything she wants to be able to want. Together, the three of us came to an agreement. Since my partner and I have discussed the topic thoroughly and agreed we aren't having kids, I will wear the dress at my wedding and have it professionally cleaned afterward. It will be stored with my father afterward, and if/when her future child gets married, they will have access to the dress if they or their partner want it. My dad also gave my sister our mom's old wedding ring to keep. In the end, we concluded that I was wrong for going behind her back, but she should have communicated more, and our dad should have told both of us his intentions before giving me the dress. Ultimately, we worked everything out and are talking about attending family therapy so nothing like this happens again. A deleted user said, OP, I hope you realize that the situation is still messed up. Just because you were younger doesn't justify you getting little to nothing of sentimental value from your mother, apart from one item that is on loan and will go back to your sister. I'm not saying you should have everything, but the sentimental items from your mother should have been split equally between you and your sister. Even if you were young, those items could have been stored safely for you. Even if you won't be having kids to pass them on to, you should be allowed to have sentimental items and mementos that you can display or use every day or for important events. There might be a piece of jewelry you wear every day that you'd want to be buried with, or you could will your mother's items to your sister's potential child too, to keep it in the family. I am glad the wedding dress issue was resolved in a way that has calmed down the situation, but I hope you realize that your sister still seems like an AH and appears to be the favorite. Your only living parent continues to favor her, which is not fair to you or to your mother, who presumably loved both of you equally. She would not like to see her daughter with just a purse and some money and little to nothing of sentimental value to remember her by. User Successful Moment said, I'm guessing that the sister finally relented when her dad told her it was a wedding gift, not a gift because she was the oldest or because their mom gave it to her. There was no wedding. OP had already asked to borrow the dress for the wedding and have it cleaned and returned. The sister could have avoided a lot of drama by not being selfish. Even if she does conceive a child through IVF, it costs about $25K each time, and the odds aren't high. Most people try at least a few times to have a baby. It might be a boy and his partner might not want it, or a daughter might feel it is too out of style or the wrong size to work. Anyway, at least the original compromise suggested by OP ended up working. User Calico Cat said, first of all, congrats on your upcoming wedding. I'm so glad that you are able to wear your mother's dress. It sounds like your dream dress, and I'm sure your mother would be so happy to know that she'll be part of such a huge milestone in your life. It's great that the three of you were able to sort things out, but as others have said, it feels extremely unfair that your sister was given your mother's car, pearls, dresses, wedding ring, and wedding dress, while you were only left money and one of her purses. Your ages when your mother passed should not have had any bearing on how her possessions were shared between you and your sister. It's wonderful that you all have decided that family therapy is a good idea going forward.